And the question is, with limited places in special schools and behavioural units for Key Stage 3 and below, and the threats to funding for further education institutions, how can you ensure the protection of fair opportunities for young people in Dudley? And we'll start with Councillor Cllr.
Okay. Thank you very much. And it's been a brilliant debate so far this evening, I think. On the issue of young people not being heard, I agree with you. Because young people don't vote, and that was brought out very clearly. Get out there and vote early, that's what I say. What I would say is that my door is always open, and to the Chair, I'd certainly welcome a visit from the Youth Parliament at any time. You tell me when, where, and what the agenda is, and we'll certainly get together and have a conversation. And that's an open invitation to any member of the Youth Party. Yeah, he's got me nailed now, isn't he? Yeah, it's on camera, I noticed, so I'm done. I'm going to start with the second section of that question: how can you ensure protection of fair opportunities for young people in Dudley? I want to take it in the round, really, rather than get into specifics. There's people on the panel who are much more greater command of the detail than myself. But I'd say it's no use at all to a young person if they go to a fantastic school or facility and then they go home to inadequate housing. So that's one thing we have to deal with. I think as an economy, as a country, as a council, we have to build more homes, and those homes have to be suitable for families and the needs of young people. It's no good if we go into a great facility, a great building, but then you're not getting the best education that we can possibly ensure. So I'd like to see a good school in every part of Dudley authority. We need to have equality of opportunity to high standard education. We need inclusive schools that are equipped, that are fitted with the right equipment, so that all people can access learning in a way that is appropriate for them, and actually gives them the best opportunity in life. As Children's Services lead member, that's what I'm about, really. That's my job. I want to see people who are healthy. I want to see young people who are healthy. I want to see them actually live up to their potential and exceed their potential. I want people to aspire and to move on. My colleague there, Peter, has already talked about austerity, and he's talked about it in political terms, and I'd like to also talk about austerity in political terms. We're really up against it, I think, as a country. We're really up against it as an authority. And what I see, and what makes me angry, is that the poorest and most disadvantaged are actually bearing the brunt of austerity. It's the poorest and disadvantaged who are actually paying the biggest bill through the cuts agenda. And what I'd say is that this agenda is about a choice. Austerity is not inevitable, it's about a choice. It reminds me really of me growing up in the 1980s, really. That I think every generation feels that the generation above them, the adults above them and whatever, have got it all sewn up. And I certainly remember feeling that at the time. And I think it's back to that stage again. I think we are really in a situation where the elder generation has got it more sewn up than usual. You come out of university, you could come out of university with a £30,000 bill hanging around your neck. You get a job, and that job doesn't buy you a decent home. You get a job, and the deposit for a house is a multiplier of your annual income. Those kind of things are wrong, they disadvantage, and as I said, the country at the moment seems all sewn up, and perhaps it's sewn up for the wrong people, the 1%, and we should be really looking after the other 99.
And we'll move to Councillor Richards.
First of all, thank you for inviting me today. I'm a councillor, I'm 20 years old, and I want to make it one of my missions while I'm a councillor in this term of trying to get involved with the youth of the area, because it is important and your voices do matter, and if you're not old enough to vote yet, then you you may not be heard, but your councillors and your MPs are there to listen to you, and you need to vote. And I think, you know, as we discuss in education, I think it should be taught in schools. Politics should be taught in schools. You should be taught what it means, not party political, but what it means to vote and what your government does. So one thing I believe in education is equality of opportunity, which Ian just said. So the one-size-fits-all system doesn't work. And we talked a lot about austerity, and actually under the Conservative government and under the coalition government, more people from disadvantaged backgrounds have actually gone to university and higher education. So you've seen an increase of 21% of disadvantaged 18-year-olds applying. In Scotland, you've actually got a funding shortfall because they're not paying fees. And actually there's fewer working class children in higher education in Scotland than there are in the UK. So I think that's an indicator that actually austerity isn't a terrible thing. With regards to education, it hasn't damaged it in the way that some people believe it has. So you've got universities with huge banks of money now, and I think I'm not qualified to be talking about how further education should be funded. I'm not an expert in that at all. But when it comes to university, I think it's worked. There's more people applying to university. The fee system has not put them off. I'm at university myself, and I had to make the decision to not move away to university because I knew I couldn't afford it. My parents couldn't afford to do that, and the loan wouldn't cover the cost. It would be too stressful to work while I was away. So I made the conscious decision of staying at home and gaining experience while I was at university, and luckily I had a good university not far away that I could commute to. So to sum up, there should be equality of opportunity. There should be a range of different options when it comes to colleges. Academies give you a great opportunity to be specialised in a skill. I went to a science college and I did a lot of work with the science club and became a science ambassador, although I know nothing about science now, but I really enjoyed it at the time, and I think it gives you a lot more opportunities through that.
Maybe back over to Connor again.
Okay, I'm going to stand up again, because again, as I said earlier, big issues means stand up and talk about it. So, to bring back, not to austerity necessarily on a wider scale, but to austerity, it's hit the hardest for young people. Austerity has hit hard for young people, and we can't deny that fact. I want to start by actually giving a bit of praise to the woman sitting before me, Remley. I went to her principal talk last week, sometime last month. And I was looking around King Yates College. I'm in Year 11, looking forward to going to college as well. And I sat in her principal talk with my parents. And actually, what really sparked my enthusiasm to go to King Yates was extracurricular activities and extracurricular things and things that you can do outside of academic subjects. And actually looking at King Yates in particular, because that is the only college I've looked at, I'm not going to lie, those different enrichment projects and those different things you can get involved with, they widen your span and they widen your intelligence and also your knowledge in different things that you may not have thought of before. And actually, what that means, it engages students. I would never have thought, oh, I might want to join a Harry Potter club. You know, even though you can be a bit of a nerd, it's a different thing. And actually, looking at further education units, etc., if you're going to cut fundings to those places like King Yates, who are a brilliant college, won't be able to offer those things anymore because actually it costs to run some of those things. And then what you're doing is you're limiting young people. You're limiting young people to what they want to do. And that's why I want to bring back to academies as well. That we talk about equality, young people, we talk about equality within education. Academies have a lot more of... I go to the state school, I go to the Worsley school in Worsley, hence the name. And we're a state school, we don't get all these opportunities such as being able to go to Oxford with Ridgewood I was looking at the prospectus for Kingheads, and Ridgewood, well, it doesn't say in the prospectus for everything, but Ridgewood students can get in with 6 Cs to Kingheads. I need 6 Bs to get in, and actually what that means is people don't have to work as hard to get into places, and simply because they're an academy and trust, I'm not denying the fact that that's a good idea, but if we're promoting equality, then there should be equality within education as well. Thank you.
To stand or not to stand, that is the question. Whether it is no from in the mind, no. From setting, those who know English my job is not as a politician. My job is an officer of the council, and therefore I am apolitical, and my job is to be champion for children, young people and families while we're delivering the council's business. And that is fundamental to what we do. So there are only 2 things that will make a difference in terms of equalities. One is standards, which is where you were heading, and the other is inclusion. So the thing about standards is this. It is absolutely irrelevant where you go to school, so long as you have the best high-class educational opportunities that give you improved life chances. And it doesn't matter whether you go to an academy, a maintained school, a voluntary aided school, a voluntary control school, a cooperative trust school. My responsibility is to challenge those institutions and support them to get the best out of that for you. And if we don't do that, we're failing as a council. So absolute standards is about your ability to do well. It's about the amount of progress you make. This recent time span of perhaps 3 or 4 years, the focus has changed from getting over that hump of at GCSE getting a C to actually how much progress have you made. So it doesn't matter if you are the brightest button in here or the less bright button in here. It's about how well did we, Dudley, your school, the local authority, do by you to give you those life chances. So it doesn't matter whether you got the C if you made stunning progress, because you'll carry on up that ladder and you've got time to do that. So my job is to make sure that all schools are held to account, and in fact academies are state-funded schools. They are just like maintained schools, they just have to be funded directly from the Department for Education. They are not independent private schools, they have different flexibilities to maintain a school, but they are state-funded. My job is to hold everybody to account, be they a local authority maintained school or an academy, for what happens to you and your education. And within that, the other piece is inclusion, because every good school and every outstanding school makes sure that everybody is included. So schools, for example, get particular funding based on deprivation. It's called pupil premium. There is additional money put into every school, primary and secondary, and they should be held to account by people like me for how they spend it, so that youngsters from deprived families get the same chances. And it's patently true, from leading on from what Nicola was saying, that the biggest indicator of social mobility is the first young person in any family to go to university. That doesn't mean that other forms are less valuable, it doesn't mean apprenticeships, work-based training are less valuable. I can see my red card. But it means that it's a social indicator. My job is to make that happen for you.
Let me be very, very clear. We already do not have fair opportunities for young people in Dudley. And I'm going to make a very strong bridge between the topic of education and that we have just recently discussed on austerity, because there is an intrinsic link between the two. And what I will say to you is, in July, George Osborne announced that he would be looking to save $20 billion from departmental budgets by the end of this parliament, i.e. by the next election. He announced that he would protect three budgets, the NHS, schools up to 16, and international aid and development. That's 59% of departmental budgets. The remaining approximately 30% has to bear the brunt of all of the austerity cuts. So let me be clear that anyone looking to go into education within the 16 to 19 sector in this area, of which we have wonderful education. I work very closely with the other principals in the Black Country, Halesowen College, Dudley College, Walsall College, Wolverhampton College, Sandwell, excellent institutions, and King Edward's, of course, all of us who want very much to work collaboratively to provide the greatest choice of very high quality education to the young people of this locality. We are being stunted by the government's unfair contradictions in the funding of education, and you need to be aware of that. I've been so impressed with what I've seen tonight by young people caring, but you actually need to know what the reality is. And the reality is that because of political agenda, the political agenda of getting votes, everyone cares about primary schools and sweet little looking kids. There is a 22% differential in the funding for schools. Once you hit 16, if you don't stay in a school sixth form, and by the way, school sixth forms are very inefficient in this area, there's very few of them, and if you don't have 250 students within your sixth form, it's very inefficient. You then are going to be in a position where you are going to be funded 22% less. And then you go back to universities and you know that the funding is there. So the issue really is about how we can get a fair funding formula across the country for all young people so that we can work collaboratively to provide the best high-quality education and choice for everyone.
Okay, so with all of that, I just wanted to throw back out the question, which was how can you ensure the protection of fair opportunities for young people in Dudley with a focus area on FE institutions and special schools and behavioural units for below Key Stage 3, which bar a few people, not all of the panel, actually addressed. So coming directly from what Remley's just said, here we have a document from HM Government which says they are looking to achieve transition towards fewer, larger, more resilient and efficient providers and more effective collaboration across institution types. Basically, they're looking to create bigger, more specialist colleges, which means small colleges, as you said, will be shut down and put into huge institutions. How is that, as well, bringing on what Connor said about having wider opportunities, is that protecting the opportunities for young people? Is that giving them the best opportunity if people have got to travel, if people have got to make the choice at 16 where they want to go to a specialist unit? Just my take on that.
Quite frankly, yeah, it is limiting young people, as I said earlier. To go back on special schools and behavioural units, never in my life have I visited one of those, and honestly I hold my hands up and say I apologise for that, because at the end of the day I represent those young people on a national scale, and although there may only be 32 young people at Charity Learning Centre or Sycamore Short Stay, I still represent those young people, and those young people don't have as many opportunities as somebody in a normal school would. Bringing on opportunities, I would just like to quickly say, I don't want to raise up an argument, but academies, yes, although they are directly funded by the government, they don't have to follow the curriculum by the government, and what that means is that essential life skills like curriculum, citizenship, and PSHE lessons don't have to be taught. What that means is they don't learn sex and relationship education, don't learn finance, and don't learn politics, and these are vital and essential skills. Again, to bring on, there was a review and restructure in 2014 from the Interim Director of Children's Services. Basically what that means, they looked at the document, have we done that? And actually they go out and research for special schools and behavioural units. What do I think can be done? Again, interest the pupils, ask the pupils, consult the young people that are there. When we pick campaigns, we don't pick campaigns based on what we believe, because we could just be like, anti-bullying campaign, what a good campaign, we could do a lot with that. But actually what young people want is funding their youth services, or they want a living wage, or they want a curriculum for life, or they want votes to 16. And actually what we need to think is, what do young people want? Not what do we want sitting in a boardroom. Because I guarantee you there's about 20 of us at each meeting, and we'll sit in there and we'll go, oh yeah, we really want that. But actually, if you consult the young people, they will want that. And that's what you need to consider, and that's what you need to think, and that's how you best represent young people. I have one final point. So ensuring the protection of fair opportunities,
bring around equality. As you said, sitting alongside all the other principals in the area, actually consulting your pupils on what they want, because I guarantee you some things will be different to what you originally anticipated.
So with regards to the further education funding and what Remley just said, I would be incredibly sad as an ex-pupil of Cllr to see somewhere like that closed down, because I think it's a very special place and it was the only place in the area available with offering those kind of things. Other than that, it was Old Swinford and there were cost implications of going there. Cllr was a great place, and if that's the effect that the policy has, that's why you've got members of Parliament, and I'm pretty sure Margot Jones is she helping? That's what your MPs and councillors are there for, because I represent the Conservative Party. It doesn't mean that I won't stand up and go back to them and say this isn't right and I don't like this. I'm trying to remember all the other points now. So with regards to opportunities, too often there's been postcode lottery to what school you go to, and that shouldn't be the case. So although I'm surprised that grammar schools haven't been brought up in this debate so far, and recently Nicky Morgan has announced the introduction of new grammar schools, and people might think that selection's bad, selection stops giving people equal opportunity. Actually, what it does when you limit that is it limits equality of opportunity. There's less grammar schools, there's less of the institutions per area. It means that the house prices go up nearer the good schools, and then that limits normal people, and that shouldn't happen. Also, I want to go back to something that was said a bit earlier about politics being taught in school. I've always said that I completely agree that it needs to be taught, and academies, I went to an academy, we got taught sex education and finance.
But after statistics, 60% of schools.
But also, this is something that, talk to your MPs and your councillors about. Come and talk to me about it. I'm all for talking to young people. I'm young myself. I want to hear people's views, I want to hear what matters. But also, let's work together and not label people as career politicians who go to university and enter in politics, because that's stopping young people from being represented. Let's work together and help each other rather than saying, labelling it as a bad thing that a young person has an interest in how the country's run and wants to have a positive impact on it.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on what Jhanelle was saying, because she was referring to the area-based reviews, which were also announced in July by the government. And the area-based reviews are for all institutions that are in the FE sector. So any sixth form college, tertiary college, or general FE college will fall into this. So all of the colleges I mentioned in the Black Country will be undergoing a review at some point before March 2017. I do want to make it clear that none of us have any intention of closing. In fact, what we are doing is working together to have a very coherent and collaborative voice in order to ensure that we can continue to offer the very high-quality education that we're so proud of in the Black Country, and that has enabled all young people who are aspiring and want to go into any kind of professional or vocational work to be able to have that choice. However, it is important to know what you can do. And I really would like to echo what Nicola said. I met with Margot James, who's the local MP for where the college is situated in Stourbridge. Contact your MP before the 25th of November, when the spending review is going to be announced by George Osborne. When the comprehensive spending review comes out, if there's going to be further cuts, and we know there will be further cuts to further education, the more your voice can be heard through your local MPs, the better. Because what we want to do is to try to minimize that as much as possible. Osborne wants to talk about increasing productivity in this country, and of course we need to do that. We need to do that by investing in young people, in their futures, in their careers, and their education is the pathway to that career. So it's kind of twisted thinking to think you can't do that. What's very interesting, and you might like to know, is that school sixth forms were not included in the area-based reviews. So whilst they are aimed at driving further efficiencies because of austerity, there is an inherent contradiction that not all 16 to 18 provision is being looked at. So that is something that is the way it is, so we have to look forward with solution-based, productive way to deal with this, and that is why I'm joining with the other college principals to work together so that we can come out of this secure and safe at the end of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jhanelle. Yeah, I read some figures just the other day, the adult education budget in further education colleges. And I used to be a further education lecturer. I worked in large and small post-16 settings for 13 years. And I remember a small college I was part of being swallowed by a larger institution. And I think sometimes some things are lost in that, some qualities are lost in that. But I noticed that adult education has already been cut by 35% since 2009. And if the cuts continue in the same order, we're looking at another 24%, so that's 59% cuts in adult education. I can't believe there's any other country that would actually create an underclass of poorly educated adults, that would actually say, we need to grow our way out of crisis, we need to grow our way out of austerity. To do that, we need an educated workforce. I know, let's cut those opportunities for adults to get on and work and earn. Connor, I think you made some really interesting points about academies. I share some of your reservations, but I think academies are vehicles for people to improve, and they're vehicles for aspiration. I'm not convinced that's the same with grammar schools. I think grammar schools are vehicles to promote middle class opportunity. People with the sharpest elbows will get to the front at the expense of the disadvantaged. Universities and the participation of disadvantaged young people in university is great and terrific. What I'm really concerned about is the amount of debt that we load onto young people at the very start of their careers, at the very start of their life. And again, Connor, she's not one of my I agree with Nick Clegg moments, but just bring it back to you here. You talked a bit about a broad curriculum, and I really support that, about a liberal education, and learning for learning's sake is okay. Whatever your parents or whatever teachers will tell you about you've got to learn to get a job, actually it's okay to just learn. And that's one thing I've took to heart really. I was the first person in my household to go to university, and I chose a degree that was some people would consider useless, but it's certainly in good stead. And it's amazing how sometimes things just bubble up into your mind. At my advanced age, I still have thoughts, I still have that going on in my head, and it's extremely useful. And that's because I had a very broad and a very liberal education. So just a few points really to try and draw some of these excellent points together. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so to pick up on a couple of points, going back to your curriculum for life, academies. We did a consultation, again, which we always do when we do campaigns, and it was over 60% of young people don't feel they've had adequate sex and relationship education, adequate finance education, and adequate political education. And actually, if we need to know what's going on in our country, we need to know how to pay taxes. Actually, what I did when I was down in London last week in a debate for political education in schools, how many people in here were taught how to pay their taxes? How many people in here will have to pay their taxes at some point in their life? That's everyone, okay? If we're not taught how to do essential life skills, how can we do it? We have to learn from not only our parents, but we have to learn ourselves sometimes, and that's a big thing. Schools and further education units are meant to prepare you for further life. So I've got a point here that says it's important that people in the UK are allowed to nationally support young people in what they want to do in their further life and career, and that leads me on to a broader curriculum. I can't really put in the passion how much I support a broader curriculum. I'm the director of a campaign called First Aid for Schools, and what that aims simply is to get first aid lessons into schools, some essential life skills. Knowing how to save someone's life is a vital skill, and although you've got the Staying Alive adverts that happen on TV, how many people actually take those in, and how many people will actually think, oh, I'd love to do a first aid first aid qualification, if we offered that in schools, how many young people then know how to save a life? I think the broader curriculum is a really important thing. Go back onto academies again. I go to a state school, and we have been proven to be less funded than academy schools, just because a school is funded by the Department of Education. Again, as you're saying, it is a postcode lottery. I don't think that's fair. Why should somebody who lives I'm using Ridgewood as an example, I completely apologise, but lives in Stourbridge, goes to Ridgewood, gets the opportunity to go to Oxford University for a day, right? There's some people there just as intelligent as young people at Worsley. Guarantee we don't have as good grades as people at Ridgewood, but we still have those intelligent people. One of my best friends is head boy. He's going to get A stars and everything. You can tell he's predicted A's and A stars. But we don't get the opportunity to go to those places. So I think it's actually about equality, making a broader curriculum and making a better support system for young people, really.
An eclectic bit of comeback, I'm afraid, that don't all hang together, just listening to what other panellists have said. But the piece that we're talking about here around the finance education, the sex education, those additional personal social education pieces, actually, that 60% of young people don't get that in good order. It's true, and it's true in academies and states maintained schools. It's true across the piece. It's not simply about type of school, it's about how schools deal with it. Another piece of that is how schools deal with careers, information, advice and guidance, because that is fundamental to what happens next. To whether you go stay to a sixth form, go to a college, go into work-based learning, the quality of careers, information, advice and guidance is one of the most important things that will happen. And Ofsted reporting has shown in recent times that it's generally very mixed. Nothing to do with whether it's an academy or a maintained school, it's very mixed. And one of the jobs is for all schools to give outstanding careers, information, advice and guidance. And my last point, kind of hasn't been into special schools recently, but I have. I've been into about 3 or 4 in the last month. And I'll tell you, both the youngsters and the heads would be quite traumatised to hear that you think they're not engaged, because in one of them, right in the entrance, is actually pictures of their school council. They're able to talk with me about the sort of issues they've raised, and the same when talking to their head and walking around. So it's about how a school goes about it, not whether they're special or not. It's about leadership of a school and engagement of young people.
Okay, for the panel, I'm taking this last quick point of Connor, and then we're going straight to the floor.
Okay, I'd like to quickly say I never said that special schools and behavioural units were unengaged. I was saying that actually what it was that I haven't been into those schools and asked for the representatives of those young people. I completely disagree that young people are disengaged, because actually we would have got 16,583 young people to vote and make a mark this year. Young people are engaged, young people do want a voice, and I'm not denying that at all. What I was saying was I haven't been into those schools and asked those young people's voices, and actually that is something that I regret and will be going into those schools.
Okay, and questions from the floor? Okay, right.
Just a small point for myself, as a person who I felt was failed by my educational system growing up, I feel I've done very, very well for myself from this, but do you believe that there is enough pastoral support in the school system? Do you believe there is enough? I agree with Connor on the basis that the extracurricular activities, the personal social development are major key aspects for a child's development or a person's development coming through. But as for pastoral support, do you think there's enough there for them as they come through?
Over to Ollie.
I'm quite surprised this hasn't been mentioned actually. It comes under academies, but free schools have obviously become quite a common thing nowadays. And the question stays, how is the fair opportunities and protection going to be for young people? And the thing is free schools allow teachers without the teaching qualification to teach students. So how is a person who goes to a state school, again, someone who goes to a free school, again, using the term postcode lottery, because you live closer to a primary school or a secondary school that is a free school, how would that again change the opportunities for those young people because they don't go to a state school or an academy, but they are taught by people who don't have the right qualifications? I'm not saying that they're bad people.
Sarah?
I just wanted to know, why are young people always seen as a statistic as opposed to individual people based entirely on their grades, as opposed to what they can and can't do and how well they will do in the profession that they want to do later in the future?
Abby?
I just wanted to say I thought it was quite narrow-minded to dismiss sixth forms that are attached to high schools, because you've got to think that not every young person is the same. Everybody's an individual, even if they're considered smart enough or got good enough grades to carry on to higher education post-16. And I just think that to put all these, you mentioned like merging schools into big institutions, and I think that can be detrimental to the education of someone.
Callum?
So I think with cuts being made to education, with further education in particular, I think it's not just different colleges that are going to be affected by it, but also different classes. Because I know if I want to go get a textbook, I can go into my college, I can go into the library, I can get the textbook I want, but if cuts are being made, the college might not necessarily be able to buy the book, or cuts being made to the library, they might not be able to have the book. But say, if you were in a higher class and you could afford a £200, £300 textbook, then you could just go in and buy it straight away. So I think by making the cuts, then you're also making a bigger gap in the education of different classes. So I was just wondering how you think that should be combated as well.
Any further questions from Helen?
I think it was interesting that it's probably slightly biased by some of the panellists, obviously being from a higher education college, but as somebody who has been through everything except the normal state education system, it's quite interesting that nobody ever talks about the other options. So I was at private school for 8 years, which was useless, and I then was homeschooled for 8 years, and I left immediately, and I had a C and a D in maths and English, and that was it. And I went on an apprenticeship, and I am now a full-time worker on full wages, and I'm contributing to the economy, I'm contributing to my household. I think it's interesting that people continually talk about grades, they continually talk about university. University is not the measure of somebody's intelligence by any means. I think it's interesting that actually all the people who've come tonight probably have aspirations to do A-levels and go to university. The vast majority of young people, I think, particularly in deprived areas, their focus is actually, we need to go out and we need to earn something. And it was interesting what Ian said, that it's just okay to learn. That's okay if you are in a situation where that's fine, you can earn. As somebody who's now in a single parent family, actually, if I'm at college all day, it's not those things, it's can I have some money to go to the shops, or can I have some money to catch a bus, or whatever. Those things all add up for my mother, and I now have the freedom to say, actually, not only can I pay for myself, I can contribute towards that family, and therefore give other people opportunities, as well as paying tax and contributing to the economy to get us out of the mess that we're currently in. So actually, university isn't the solution for everyone, and I think that must be emphasised, particularly in Dudley. So, yeah.
Thank you. Forgive me for asking this question as an old person, but I've worked in Peru for 10 years, and I've worked in private system as well, and the thing that I notice most is that the problems with kids are remarkably similar no matter what school you go to. They're to do with social skills mainly, and I find that what most children struggle with at school is survival, because if they can't survive socially or emotionally or in any other way, then it's extremely difficult to learn. And my question to the panel is, do you think there should be a shift away from non-stop academic success, towards pastoral, social, emotional skills and training, so that they can be valuable members of society regardless of their academic results? I love Deanna's point about a move away from C grades. I am afraid to say I've never worked in a school that's ever had anything other than intense pressure to get C grades. But then I have worked in Dudley, and maybe that's where I've missed out. Thank you.
Addressing special schools and special education, particularly within Dudley, I do not feel like it is considered an obligation to serve that sort of community. My brother has autism and had to travel to the Briar School, which is in King's Winford, and so I feel like now that he's moved into a mainstream school, I think that transition has helped him a lot, but for others who did not have that ability to transition from a special school to a mainstream school, I do not feel like their education is catered for, especially, and so I was wondering what measures could be taken in mainstream schools to cater for those needs.
Before we open up to the panel, coming directly off Tamsin's point, there are currently no behavioural units for children in Key Stage 1. There's a list of further 13 children still growing, facing possible exclusion with no plan from the local authorities to combat that. Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 are mixed in behavioural units, and for special schools in Key Stage, well, in primary school, there are currently no places. There is not there's not a waiting service. Children have to be sent outside of the borough to be catered for there in Worcester, which is costing 65 grand per child. So that's just the light of that situation. If we go down the panel in the order that you first spoke in, and you'll have 2 minutes. 2 minutes to answer.
6 and 8 questions.
Well, how badly do you guys want to overwork it? Okay, select your questions carefully, answer them, and we'll see how it goes.
Did you want any tea tonight? We're going to be here a while, aren't we? I think I hit on a few of these points in my opening address, actually, about saying that we have to look at the broader fabric of society as well as education. We have to think about housing. We have to think about having a good school in every part of the borough, be it an academy or free school or a state school. We've got a thing called the Schools Alliance, and that's all about heads and senior leaders getting together to support each other. I think in these constrained times, these austere times, that's a really important thing moving forward, that the leadership and the excellence that is out there, and there's pockets of excellence everywhere, in every school. Schools are doing great, and it's about sharing that, capturing that, and crucially schools and colleges supporting each other. Now that's really difficult in the kind of competitive environment that we've set up around grades, and I totally agree with that. That is, it's grades, which is why I made the point about a liberal education, about a broader education. What I was trying to mutter and mumble about in terms of, even my age, things from my, stuff I did 20, 30 years ago are still usable, is that it's all, I think, the new economy, and the only way we're going to kind of, make ourselves employable moving forward is to have transferable skills, and those skills around public speaking, being confident, cooperating from people, often don't come from a book. They can come from drama, they can come from art, they can come from music, they can come from from team building, science, all those kind of activities. Which is why I'm saying I think a broader education means that every person will find something that switches them on and makes them excited about learning. This issue around free schools, they're often they grow for some kind of strange and odd local reasons often, and they often don't actually satisfy the requirements in a particular area. So they maybe not the answer. But what we want to do as an authority is talk about having a university technical college, for instance, and that will be a way of actually bringing in quality university education into the Dudley Borough. So I'll just chuck that in the mix as well.
So the first point I'm going to make is someone asked about free schools and about choice is never ever limiting opportunity. People have this idea that grammar schools are bad and they're for middle classes, when actually they're there for normal people that are very good academically. They can go and take a test, which the new grammar schools, the tests will be fairly similar to SATs, apparently. Having more of those in more locations is never limiting, because it means that people from different areas get that opportunity, just because they're not living next to a grammar school where, because there's so few now, the prices of the houses have gone up around the area. That's not limiting them if there's more schools built around them with greater choice. And on the free school subject, you're talking about teachers with no qualifications, but these are people setting up schools that have a lot of knowledge about the local area. So it's what kind of knowledge do you want? And at the end of the day, it's offering a choice, which, like I said, I don't think can ever be limiting. So the next point I'm going to make, someone talked about individuals rather than statistics, and I think that's true. I think there were far too many targets about getting young people into universities, and that clearly wasn't the answer. The answer wasn't to go to university, have the state pay for it, do a course. That shouldn't be the only option to get anywhere. Apprenticeships are wonderful, and I'd encourage apprenticeships and looking at apprenticeships and other opportunities, but also from that, working and getting work experience outside of college and university, because I don't feel like I had enough support to do that through school. But I went out there and did it myself, and combined with my education, it's been amazing, and still is. It's equally as good as the education I'm getting. And I went to King Ed's, and it was great, and I think it obviously focuses more on academic subjects. Okay, can I finish? Okay. And I've actually worked quite closely with Walsall College, which is a very different college, but absolutely incredible with the amount they offer. And I was in there thinking, oh my God, all these opportunities is amazing. And it's not about sitting in a lesson, because if that's not the way you learn, you don't have to sit in a lesson and write notes and do exams. It's about going and getting experience in, for example, hairdressing. They're in hair salon there, I think I remember. And there are gyms there where they can learn to be gym instructors, and there's far more opportunities. There's lots of different opportunities, and my point is that we should never limit that. More choice and more opportunities is always good, and it's always a good thing.
I'm going to pick up on about 4 points, merging some of them together. First one, I am disgusted, quite frankly, how schools treat us like numbers. We are nothing but a number on a piece of paper when it comes to league tables, and I think that's disgraceful that actually schools, colleges, apprenticeships, etc., which you don't have to take exams in, but when you do take exams, that number goes on, and then there's schools think, right, we've got to compete in this league table, we've got to compete with this school. Quite frankly, I think they should be abolished. I don't see any point in having league tables for young people. I think all it does is put pressure on schools, it puts pressure on young people, and actually what they should be doing, they should be investing in the individual, not investing in, we've got to get that person to get an A star, they've got the quality to get it, we need to get that A star from them, but actually investing in that individual, and if they can, if they get a B, or if they get a C, just, and actually they put a lot of time and effort into those young people, then they can. Is that not running out of time? Second one, austerity class. There used to be something called a bursary fund. I'm not sure whether it still exists. It does. It does, but it's not as much as it used to be. So it's not as much as it used to be. That is something that I think should be re-implemented. At the end of the day, some people can afford things, some people can't. That's life. Next thing, pastoral links with shifting away from academic success. We'll take Sweden as a country, for example. They don't have exams. They have the happiest children in education. I think that proves my point that actually, not just moving away completely from exams, I don't agree with that, but actually having the more pastoral links and the more vocational ideas. And then my last point quickly is undermine special education. that the lady mentioned down there, I think it's actually really important that we keep those funded, that we keep, okay, just let me finish my point. Because actually at the Worsley School we have something called LS, Learning Support, and teaching assistants there have gone down and down and down. One of my friends from my IT class, her brother has a bit of dyslexia, all these hours have been taken away from him. I'm nearly done. I think that's disgusting. Again, it's a disgraceful move from the government. They cut things that are so important to people. So definitely, I think they should be kept, and I think it's really important that they are there.
Right, in short order. Question about pastoral support and about that social emotional side of it. Amongst my time, I have been secondary head of a large comprehensive. I've also been an inspector. I've done a whole host of things. And one of the phrases that Ofsted used to use that stuck with me was when we started to move away from a simply academic view to pastoral care. Schools used to say to Ofsted, "Oh, they come from tough times, these kids. They have tough family backgrounds, but we love them. We look after them. We give them breakfast." And Ofsted went, "We don't mind if you do that. That's great, fantastic. So long as it's caring with rigour." And if you take nothing away from what I've said tonight other than that, caring with rigour is exactly that. You don't get the life chances for young people if you don't have expectations and aspirations for them, and you don't get them on that ladder if you don't care about what happens to them and how you help them get to that point. And none of us would be in that business actually if it was a sausage machine, even though we have targets. And free schools, should they be unqualified teachers? I, for example, would consider myself quite academic and capable. I can't play a musical instrument. There are some fantastic music teachers who are not qualified teachers, for example. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. You would expect me to say I would expect most teachers to be qualified. The answer is yes. Some have instructor status, which is slightly different. Out-of-borough placements. We talked about going to Worcestershire at one point. Placements for young people are based on need. Sometimes authorities can't meet that need in the schools they've got. Sometimes they go elsewhere because that institution can meet need that we can't.
Well, with the timer ticking, sometimes you're not necessarily as clear as you would like to be. So point of clarification, please. I wasn't in any way suggesting that school sixth forms didn't have the same quality or shouldn't exist. So please do forgive me if that's the message I conveyed. What I was trying to express was the inequality in the funding, and in a time of austerity, when different phases of education are funded so differently, then that makes the equality of opportunity for all young people quite different. No educational institution is perfect. That is true. We know that. And no educational institution is right for everyone, which is why I feel it's so important that the excellent colleges that we have in this area work collaboratively together to make sure that we are providing for everyone. And to that end, I think that it is very, very important, and I do believe that the colleges I have mentioned, whom I have been working with, that we all do believe that the individual does matter, and that it should be about developing the whole person. And exams matter if you're going on to the next step in a particular scenario, but it isn't everything. And that's what's actually quite important. I think that's been expressed quite eloquently tonight, so I just wanted to say how much I support that view. And university isn't for everyone, which is why it's so important that we work well together to make sure that the next step is there, whatever that happens to be, whatever's right for that individual, whether it is university, whether it is a higher level apprenticeship, whether it's straight into employment or further training or further education. And I think that's what we need to do, and that's what the cuts are threatening in terms of us being able to provide that. And in terms of free school choice, I just have to say that the government did refresh the guidance on free schools at the same time as they're saying that they're going to be merging other institutions. Again, it's a question of fairness of funding. I would really like all of you to please write to your MPs, that's what you can do, and call for a fair funding formula across the whole nation.
Okay, that is the end of the education panel. We're in a little bit over, and therefore we've reached the end of the debate, and everybody's still alive, which is great. Thank you all so much for coming. Can I have a huge thank you, a round of applause for all of our panelists?